Welcome to the Echo Essentials Podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Today we welcome Vic Fedeli. He's in the studios. This episode is brought to you by North Bay Toyota.
It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers. Have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cab SR 4-wheel drive and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at northbaytoyota.com for details.
Today, we get to speak with Vic Fedeli.
Yeah, that was great. Great to have him in here.
Is it a bit of a get, getting Vic Fedeli?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but it's a political time, so all candidates are going to come in, right? Or is that not true?
Well, he had more to risk than gain, I think. So it was a coup for us to have him in because without knowing if there's a Liberal candidate, we're recording this and it's still 5 o'clock deadline for somebody to be announced or filed for today. So this is February 5th. And so we don't know if he's going to have a real run for it or not.
So that's right, because we don't know as of at this recording time that if a Liberal candidate has stepped forward yet.
Or who. I'm pretty sure there's going to be somebody.
He said that in the interview.
Well, he says it's important for a party that says they're a provincial party to have someone run in every riding. Right. And there's some other reasons why you want to have some people run in the...
Because there's money and things, right?
Yeah, there used to be access, to be a provincial party, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a big deal. So I doubt the Grits are not going to have somebody.
We only had so much time to talk to him. You know, we of course we talk about the trade war. We talk about election. You had some good questions. Just sort of peppered him really quickly. It's like, well, if you came to my door, and then you're like, and he answered them all, right? Yeah. But do you as a journalist? Do you want to dig in deeper to a conversation like that? I was just kind of really interested because he knows all these facts and different things, right?
Well, definitely. I'd love to be able to have a real interview with him where I can follow up the questions and riff off of his answers and to come up with examples. And I had lots of stuff in my pocket for that. But you don't always get that opportunity, and it was great to see him field some of those questions and got him on record, and people can pick apart whether they think that the Conservatives are doing what they want in certain areas. So it was good. It was good. But yeah, I wanted more, but
So actually one of the questions, because we only had a certain amount of time, but I wanted to ask him in our last 2 podcasts ago, we talked about potentially going to a single school board. I noticed in the Echo Essentials newsletter, comes out every Wednesday. Go to northbayecho.ca, sign up for the newsletter. Dave does a great job on it. Dave Thompson actually had a bit of a comment about that episode. We were saying, let's go to one school board. He's a former trustee.
Yeah, and he was chair of the board actually as well. And he made a longer comment that was on our YouTube channel underneath there, North Bay Echo YouTube. And we have hit the 400 subscriber mark, by the way.
Hey, this is good.
That was late last night. Yeah. So the one school board, I'd like to see a little bit more. We were going to have other school boards invited, but now that the election is taking place, I think we're going to save those spots for the next couple of weeks for candidates for the other parties. And but I want to come back to that school board efficiencies, education efficiencies, and they talk about even reducing from 4 at least.
Any big issues that are happening around town that we should know about? Anything right now? Because when an election like this comes up, we're going to have provincial, then we're probably going to piggyback into a federal election after that. All of a sudden, municipal politics sort of gets a little quieter.
Well,
right?
and they're right in the middle of budget deliberations, right? So this is a time where they wanted people engaged with and providing some input for them to make decisions, and that's going to be all there's a distraction from that. I did watch the last council meeting. It was interesting. There was a vote on the water and sewer rates. Tanya Freybosch was the only one that declined. There wasn't really a lot of coverage about why she declined. But I loved Gary Gardner's response to her about it, right? So you're going to have to go back and check out their YouTube recording of that meeting. But yeah, municipal politics has taken a backseat.
Yeah, and it's, don't we pay really high taxes here? Like based on provincial averages and...
No, not compared to comparables. Like when we were talking to Maggie Horsfield, the budget chief, I asked her that question, and she said that we're in about middle pack of our comparable cities.
Are we? Yeah, okay. Yeah. When my mom passed away a number of years ago, sold our childhood home, right? Wasn't a palace by any means, but it's in Toronto, right? So it's sold for almost $1 million, right? I'll never forget when my brother and I are going through the different paperwork and getting the estate all ready and stuff, right? And she was paying like a year for taxes, like just over $2,000 on $1 million property.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's incredible. 2,000, and it was like you got garbage pickup. I remember like twice a week, and it was incredible.
I think Mayor Chow is taking care of that and raising them.
That's different now, right? Yeah.
And I'm not sure when the childhood home was sold. What year?
Oh, it was pre-COVID.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that their percentages are much lower than other municipalities because they pay other fees as well. But also their properties went. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, a smaller rate, but on a bigger price, right?
Right. And they have a lot more industrial tax base that they can pull from, right? Because my brother lives in Pickering, and his taxes are higher in Pickering because Pickering doesn't have that same industrial tax rate and that they can pull from, where like a Scarborough, where I grew up, is very different. And so that's really, how do we lower taxes in our city, is we have to grow that industrial tax or getting more businesses growing that's going to pay their share of the taxes, right? And it'll take the pressure off the community. Now you need more resources, and anyhow.
The one thing I didn't get to say to Vic it was I wanted to poke him about the beer and liquor at convenience stores.
Right.
I let that one slide. Obvious on the front of it. Spending $650 million to rush something in that he could have waited for a deadline is not what I would call fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be Vic, right? That would be, there's some other power play happening, because it doesn't make any sense why you would do that. It doesn't make any sense. And so, I know you said in our last podcast, it's like, it's probably the government looking after their friends. I'm like, no, I don't believe that's the reason. There's a reason, but I don't think that's it.
I still think it is small business, and they had a lot of support from small business and those,
It has made a difference, though, for small. You go into the Circle K now, it's a beer store. I can hardly. Do you have O. Henry bars here anymore? Like, it's only, I can get Bud Light, but I can't get O. Henry bars anymore.
Yeah, well.
All right, looking forward to this. He's so good, right?
Yeah.
He can speak about a lot, and he's just so good, right?
Yeah, I was really hoping that he'd spill the coffee beans on a few things that we could get out, but we didn't get him to spill those coffee beans.
No, he's too smart.
Well, I look at all these political campaigns like sports, right? Competition. And when you see the Cogeco debate on February 18th, which will be live on YouTube, you'll see that back and forth and that contest. And that reminds me of the sports at Source for Sports, one of our sponsors. And I've been getting to know Paul McLean, the owner, as a co-host of the Sportscast we do every week. And the more and more I get to know him, the more I realize that that store is like a central hub for sports in many different ways. Like, he runs management stuff through another department. He deals with fundraisers for teams. It's more than just where you get jerseys made up, or it's more than just picking out a hockey stick. He's actually created a lot of synergies that are moving further and further into the sports world here in the community. Like when we did the Spotlight interview with Mr. Loist, Graham Loist, and he's taking care of the facility at the Dome. Well, that integration that Paul has, because he's involved with hockey through the Junior Lakers, his daughters play there, and other sports. He's into baseball. It's all doing that. Like you can just see that tentacle of Sorcerer Sports as a business in the community that's more than just a store, right? So it's good. It's great to have them. They do all kinds of different things. You're going to have to drop in. One of the only places you can get good skate sharpening too.
Oh. Yeah, because that's a bit of an art, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, if you don't have the right edge, and if you get the right people doing it on a regular basis, then you can adapt your skating to what they do to your skates. So thanks again to Sorcerer Sports. Today we have Vic Fedeli as our guest in the middle of an election campaign for Ontario. Welcome, Vic.
Great to see you, and thanks for coming to the Newser yesterday, and I'm calling this officially the follow-up to that.
Oh, right on. A longtime mayor in North Bay, 2 terms, and a career politician now at Queen's Park. How many terms have you served so far?
Served 4 terms at Queen's Park, running for my 5th. But, I still don't consider myself a politician. And I know that's bizarre, having been at this for 21 years. But I talked to the Premier. He'll tell you the same thing. We're business people first, and politician comes somewhere way down the list.
Well, this one's only going to count for half a term because I'm not even sure we should be having an election. Is this really necessary?
Yeah, and, there's a year to go, but this is really important right now. We're at war. You heard me yesterday in the discussion at Metal Fab. We are at war. It's an economic war and a trade war with the United States. And the real importance is that we line up our term with the 4-year term of President Trump, so he knows who he's dealing with. We saw how he's done a cat and mouse with our Prime Minister. We need him to know we've got a government in Ontario, the largest trading partner in Canada, that we've got a 4-year term, and that's who you'll be dealing with for 4 years.
You're a history buff. So help me understand, because I haven't heard this part of trade wars. But they've dipped their toe in it when they talk about, in the 30s and the Great Depression and what happened and during trade wars. So because that language is being used about war, so explain the consequences around economies and these trade wars that have really not been part of my lifetime.
So nobody wins. That's the first thing. There's no winner in a trade war. There are only 2 losers, the aggressor and the one who is fighting back. I spent almost all of January in the States, many times before that, of course, but almost all of January in the States, in Nevada and in California and Michigan and in Washington, talking to large car companies, large tech companies, all said the same thing. We don't want this trade war to happen. We don't want these tariffs to happen. They talk about how many jobs they are going to lose in the States. They talk about if you're taxing us 25% here in Canada and in Ontario, you Americans are going to pay that bill. You're going to get the bill for higher parts, higher autos, higher washers and dryers, higher input costs. They all understand that, but they're all afraid. They told us that. They're all afraid to talk to President Trump about it.
The part I find interesting, and because I know you've been working really hard over the last little while with a number of massive deals, which is all tied to the EV industry. The part in this trade war I haven't heard too much about, or potential trade war, I'll say, because it's on hold, is we have good wages. We have, I would say, a higher cost of living here than probably the United States. Yet we do a lot of the auto sector is all along that 401 corridor that goes right over to Detroit. Is it the 30-cent dollar that they benefit from? And why would they want to? They haven't talked about, or are they talking about dismantling the auto industry in Canada, which is huge?
Well, we've all heard President Trump say, we don't need anything Canada makes. We don't need their cars. We don't need their oil. He's wrong. He's just flat out wrong. And I'll jump to the end of the story first. I think on Monday, well, first of all, on Saturday, when he actually signed the 25% tariff order, the first opening of the stock market tumbled.
Yeah.
As soon as the
dropped.
stock market opened, it tumbled, both in Canada and in the United States. I think he saw that. I think his executives that he surrounds himself with finally said to him, like, we need an out here. This tariff war is going to cost, it's going to send prices up in the States. It's tumbled the stock market. You saw that already. It's going to send inflation up here. It's going to send interest rates up here. All bad from this, I'll call it rhetoric. I honestly believe that message got through. And I said this at the news conference. Up until that order was signed, we've been talking and talking and talking in the U.S. to all of the people who would listen. We've met with senators, governors, members of Congress, the United States Chamber of Commerce, the large manufacturers, and the message is understood, but really didn't get out there on American TV that much.
Right.
But once that order was signed, it's like, well, what does that mean? Everybody found out, wow, this is absolutely horrible to us. And so that's a big part of what I believe the calmer heads prevailed and got that stopped. Now, from our perspective in Ontario, there is no answer. I can't answer your first part of your question about the supply chain because nobody knows. Parts are made here. There's an example. We make a widget here. We ship it over. They make a bigger component. They ship it back. We add more parts to it and make an even larger piece. It gets shipped back. It may be heat treated or something different. It gets shipped back. We do something else. It gets shipped back. It ends up in a tractor.
I didn't know that. It goes back apart?
6, 7, 8 times each part.
Really?
Absolutely. So let's say this one doesn't end in a car. It ends up in a tractor. That tractor is then built, shipped to Saskatchewan. Somebody at a farm in Saskatchewan buys it, grows wheat, cuts the wheat, ships the wheat to the States. They make cereal, ship the cereal back. I mean, we are an integrated economy.
Right.
That's the issue. So when it comes to these, what's going to happen to the cars, nobody could tell us. Nobody could tell anybody in the States what was going to happen, other than the fact that in a void of information, you would seize the auto sector in about 7 days. That everybody agreed that in about 7 days there'd be no more cars being made.
Can I ask a mom and pop business question here? Because that's how you started. So we don't export to the United States. Trump signs the 25% tariff. What happens to the mom and pop organizations or business? Like, what actually happens? Who says, hey, you have to pay 20? Like, where does that bill come from? Is it super complex?
So the things you would buy, your inputs that you would buy to run your business, those are the things that would go up. When the tariffs come and Canada has retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., so we're starting with $30 billion. And it was things like bourbon, perfume, shoes, apparel. There's a list that's published. Those are very targeted. They're targeted at U.S. states that are perhaps swing states. So coming to the pinch points for President Trump. They would be the states that the speaker would live in, the state that the finance chairman on the Senate would sit in, the state that the member of Congress who runs the Ways and Means Committee would sit in. So you're getting at them. And you're targeting some popular items as well. So you're going at it in a whole bunch of ways. So those items coming back are now more expensive. So it's a temporary hurt on ourselves, but you have to fight back. You can't just you can't just roll over it. Then you're going to be steamrolled for the next 4 years. You've got to stand firm and fight back. So those are the things that would go up. Now, in 21 days, according to our Prime Minister, then the real hurt comes on. This is $125 billion worth of counter tariffs. Now, those are a lot of everyday things that will, again, temporarily hurt our own people. So we stand to lose several 100,000 jobs on day one when the tariffs come
Wow.
in. Several, just
In
in
Canada?
Ontario. Just in, no, in Ontario.
In Ontario.
In Ontario. The counter tariffs, we will have a little bit more of a hurt, a self-imposed hurt, but so important to be able to fight back. And that's where the supports come in, both from the federal government and the provincial government have promised supports for unemployment enhancements or other kinds of job retraining if necessary, but money to help families, much like the COVID relief. This is COVID relief amped up.
Are you saying more relief would be required than COVID?
It's quite possible. Depends on how long the trade war goes on.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's
coming,
massive.
That's coming. Both federal government has announced that in many ways, and so has Premier Ford announced that in many ways. We're going to take care of the families, is what the Premier said. Nobody's going to be left behind in this. We are going to fight for the families, but we're going to take care of you too while the fight goes on.
You're scared.
You should be scared. You should be damn scared.
Now I'm...
You should be damn scared. When I use the word war, I don't use it lightly. This is very, very important. That's why we need Premier Ford there. This isn't the time to put somebody else there for on-the-job training. You need a seasoned person like Premier Ford, who's been in office as our Premier for 2 terms, who is a negotiator, who's lived in the States for 20 years and ran 2 businesses there. You need him. That's the political side of this discussion. The reality is when those next batch of tariffs come on, now you've seen the number before, we could lose 450, 500,000 jobs in Ontario. That's as a result of that. And that's where the supports really have to kick in.
I actually do think it's a war, and it started during the campaigning, and Trump was promising tariffs. And even as the election votes were being counted, businesses here were starting to feel the increases in prices and inability to make orders without certainty because nobody knew if they were going to have to add 25% to their business model. Why was Premier Doug Ford so happy when Trump was elected?
Look, Premier Ford does not support President Trump in any way. Anybody that is threatening Ontario, anybody that's threatening Canada is no friend of ours.
Yeah, but he was threatening tariffs during the campaign, and they caught him saying that he was happy when Trump was elected. Can you explain that at all?
Yeah, he doesn't support President Trump. He's not his friend.
Not now, but before?
Well, now he's elected president. That's the difference. Okay. Now he has the power to put those tariffs in, and I was there throughout the inauguration to listen to the president say that. Of course, being as wishy-washy as he is, he said they would be in April 1st. 2 hours later, they're February 1st. Saturday, it was going to happen Tuesday. Yeah. Monday, it's not going to happen for 30 days. Like, we're all over the map here.
But isn't Dave, sorry, can I interrupt? I want to ask you a question because and Dave's a journalist, I'm not. But like, when you ask that question, it's kind of interesting because it's gamesmanship too, right? It's like, you want to be close. It's like, okay, I like all the candidates and all the other stuff because it's our number one trading partner. So of course he's going to say that. Like, of course, you're not going to say that he doesn't like them. And then if he gets elected, that doesn't make any sense.
Think about this. We do $500 billion of trade with the U.S. They are our largest trading partner by a volume. Nobody even comes close to that. We are the number one export destination for 17 states. We're the number 2 export destination for 11 more states. 9 million Americans wake up every single morning to make goods to ship to us. It's astounding. Like, we have an integrated economy. We have shared values. We have shared infrastructure. Like the Gordie Howe Bridge is a really great example, and you see it almost, touching each other and seeing that come to completion as I passed by it a couple of weeks ago. They are our biggest trading partner. We buy more, by the way, from the States than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. That's how big we are. Combined. That's how big we are. So of course, they're a friend. Up until last week, we cheered and clapped at their national anthem. That's changed. I said this yesterday. I was in Burger World, and two tables behind me. They didn't know I was there, so it wasn't for my edification. They were asking the waitress, "Where are those tomatoes from?" Now, poor waitress. I mean, she was flummoxed by it. I mean, where are the tomatoes from?
Yeah.
But they asked that, and then I was out knocking on doors on Monday night, and the very first door that I knocked on, they were just coming in with their groceries. And it was a lovely couple. I'd never met them before. He used to work at the ONR, according to him, and Bob and Maud. And she said, we took 3 hours to grocery shop because we turned every jar, every can, every bag around until it said made in Canada. And then she started showing me one by one all of the items. And then took a lawn sign.
Will Americans do the same with our goods?
It's hard. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think they're in the same mindset.
No.
Like they're not ready. Like we've been talking about this. You turn on the CBC, CTV, anything, News Talk 1010, anything, no matter what party or what flag waves, they're talking about this. In the States, not so much.
North Bay Echo is proud to partner with Twigs Coffee Roasters, a part of the community since 1995. Twigs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. Find your favorite specialty drinks at our espresso bar, rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice, or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. And don't forget our irresistible fresh baked goods, including uncompromising gluten-free options. Twigs has 5 locations to serve you, from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls to Sudbury. Order online for pickup at twigs.ca. And coming soon, you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay.
Premier's support and glee of Trump being elected at first speaks to his political right-leaning and Trump's political right-leaning. So you have to be careful what you say and how cozy you get to any company or country like that, or any politician, especially Trump, who's already told us that he's erratic and he likes to do things.
Well, he's shown us that.
We've for sure. That. But I think the real there's 2 things I want to get at before we get too much further is why, because it's bad for business and it's bad for everybody. Everybody gets hurt, so it doesn't make sense business-wise. So tell me why do you think he's really doing this?
That's a really great question. So at the inauguration, I was talking to somebody whose name you probably know, Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, former speaker.
You were speaking to Newt Gingrich?
Yeah. So we talked, and he said, deal. What you've got to find, he said he's going to put these tariffs on. I'm telling you right now, he is putting these tariffs on, is what he said. You got to find out what he wants. What does he really want? He didn't know. Former speaker did not know. He said, I can't imagine what it is, but you got to find out, what is he really want from all this? Is it the fentanyl on the border? I don't think it can be that.
I didn't know that was a problem, actually.
Well, it's point of the fentanyl that gets into the U.S., 0.001%. So a fraction of a percent comes from Canada.
Okay.
So it can't be that, yet he made it all about that with Prime Minister Trudeau on Monday. Said, if you protect the border, then I'll let go for 30 days. But he's coming back with these tariffs. And who knows if it'll even last 30 days when he turns his head and says, oh yeah, Canada, I want to do something to them. I'm going to take over Greenland. I'm going to take over Panama. I'm renaming the Mount McKinley. I'm renaming Mexico. I'm going to now it's
condos in Gaza.
Imagine the Riviera of the Middle East. So there's not a lot of rhyme or reason. I've also said this many times. The only thing that I can predict is that Trump will be unpredictable, period.
I see online a lot of people on both sides. There's people that think this is good because they blame it on Trudeau. They say he wasn't putting enough in the military. He wasn't defending the border enough. He wasn't acting fast enough on what the Americans were telling him, what their concerns were with the border and some other things. And this is good for us in the end because we should be doing that. So some of those same people would just love to be the 51st state of the American. So I don't really take a lot of what they say. But what is this costing us in those big deals that you brought over? You're alluding, or you made mention that every day, every month is dollars. This delays any decisions. There's a real chill. What is this costing us that way?
So to be clear, there is no question that there's a business chill, that decisions aren't being made anymore. It's a wait and see. So the $46 billion in auto that we've landed, things are moving ahead. I watched the first electric vehicle come off the assembly line in Windsor, the Dodge Charger. It was beautiful to see that. I went and visited the first battery plant that's opened, and they're starting to ship the batteries. So what we've got on the books seems to be moving comfortably ahead, barring any surprises, but it's the deals that we've been working on for 2 years that have yet to be announced. Those, I'll be very blunt, and the Premier has been very blunt about it. There's a chill, and those business decisions are on hold. So, what is it costing us? It's costing us the jobs that they're not creating yet. Now, I fully expect that we're going to land these. You asked a question earlier, are they coming because of the dollar or what have you? Number one, the people. Think about Toyota as an example now. Toyota, worldwide company, they make cars all over the world. The Toyota plants in Cambridge and Woodstock, Ontario, were named by J.D. Power the #1 auto plants in the world. Not the #1 Toyota plant, the #1 auto plant. Now think of how many thousands of auto plants there are in the world. It's in Ontario. So that it's the quality of the people, and we use that in all of our discussions. It's the people is #1. We have 70,000 STEM grads, science, technology, engineering, and math grads every year in Ontario. So a steady stream of people for life sciences, for tech, and for auto, because auto today is really a computer on wheels. So we're the #2 automaker in North America. We're also the #2 tech cluster in all of North America with 440,000 tech workers. Cars of today, computer on wheels, right in our wheelhouse, so to speak.
How does all of this, like something that you've, from the very beginning, you've been a champion for the Ring of Fire. How does this has to come into play in some way? And for our riding, mining is everything.
Yep. All of the auto that we've attracted, they all have to have minerals to start with. So that's why the 66 mining and manufacturing companies in North Bay are so pleased, because they're pumping out products for exploration for all of the nickel, the lithium, and the rare earth minerals that are in the Ring of Fire. So when you think about what we're doing, look at nickel in Sudbury. 80% of all the nickel needed in the United States for their entire aerospace sector comes from Ontario. That's key. So when President Trump says, we don't need anything, you're darn tootin' you do. 56% of all the nickel in the United States that the United States needs for their defense sector comes from Ontario.
And that all be tariffed? Would that be tariffed?
Would all be tariffed, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we may just hold back on it. So when President Trump says we don't need anything from, those are the things. Premier Ford has said, first of all, we're not going to let you ship any liquor. If you go ahead with your tariffs, we're going to stop the importation of American-made liquor. LCBO is one of the largest liquor buyers, sole buyers in the world. We'll stop buying your liquor, and we may not ship you, and that's the purview of the province. We may not ship you our critical minerals. So we would have to have supports in place for all of those mines and all of those workers to help them.
That's a dangerous game, eh?
Oh. We're in a war.
Wow.
You bring out, you don't, I don't think the Premier said this publicly, but I'll say it because he said it to me, and he might have said it publicly. Like, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Like, we're in a war. You can't fight it passively.
Right.
So this will stop their entire defense sector and their aerospace. They won't be able to make an F-35 fighter without our nickel. Now, they only have one nickel mine in all of the United States. We got that in our backyard here.
Right.
So we're helping with companies in around Timmins. In the gold field of Timmins, they found unbelievable stores of nickel underground. Many say bigger than the Sudbury Basin. There's 3 mines that we know of that want to open. We have lithium. We have lithium that we expect to come out of the ground, and we fully expect to tie Northern Ontario into the auto sector for the very first time by producing a lithium hydroxide facility in Northern Ontario. 1 for sure in Thunder Bay, maybe 2. That is the lithium that's needed to make the batteries. So Northern Ontario is a big part of it. We made a big announcement at Ring of Fire just a couple weeks ago. The last sort of piece that we needed to get the road to the Ring of Fire through one of the First Nations. The last deal has been signed and the road can go. So now you're going to start to see aggregate moving and all of the things that we want to do because there's more nickel. You know, the Ring of Fire was always about chromite. It's a metal that's needed to make stainless steel. They'll literally move the chromite aside and go after the nickel now because there's so much nickel there.
Really?
Because we need the nickel first and foremost.
Right.
The chromite will come later.
That's fascinating.
I saw that you were out on the lake visiting ice huts,
I'm so smart.
doing your grip and grins.
That's so good.
Very strategic. Yeah. Now, if you came to my door, I would be asking you about the issues that are closer to my heart, which is food security for the province, greenbelt protection or lack thereof. I would be asking you about health care and whether or not we're going to have enough doctors. And I'd be asking you about what are we really doing for housing for people? What are you hearing, and can you answer any of those?
Yeah, first of all, I'll answer those in a moment. What am I hearing? I'm not hearing that at the door. I'll be very frank with you. One person has asked me about healthcare at the door. What they really are talking about, as I mentioned, the very first door I knocked on was at Bob and Maud's place when all they wanted to talk about was this tariff war. And their neighbors behind them were a couple of streets over, was the same thing. And I was saying, they just, I was at this couple's house and that must be Bob and Maud. And she was talking about the same thing, the troubles. So that's what people are talking about because they're very worried. They know that their kids, their grandkids, their jobs are going to be affected and the cost of goods is going to go up. That much they know from listening to Rosie Barton on CBC. They know that we're in a heck of a pile of trouble. We've hired 100,000 nurses in Ontario since we got elected. 12,500 new doctors. We have the shortest wait times for surgery in all of Canada. 90% of everybody in Ontario has family health care. And we've hired Jane Philpott, a former Liberal minister, to come in and help us fill that last piece. When you have the previous Liberal government firing employees and making 50 less spaces, canceling 50 spaces for doctor training, you can't be surprised that there's a problem. We are opening 3 new schools of medicine in Brampton, in Scarborough, and at York University. That's going to help. In our schools of medicine in the north and the other schools of medicine, we're bringing more recruits in. We're opening 450 spaces. So this is all going to help. The problem took the 15 years of the Liberals to get us into, and we're getting out of it. We're getting there. There's way more to do. Don't get me wrong. There's way more to do. To help at emergency rooms, you can now go to your pharmacist, and they can treat you as well as prescribe, as well as sell you. Things for like pink eye, nausea. There's 19 of the most common items that you would go to an emergency for. You can now go to a pharmacist. Your paramedics can now do treatment instead of having to bring you to the hospital on certain things. So from a healthcare perspective, it's not about money. Don't get me wrong. When we got elected, the budget for healthcare was $60 billion. This morning, it's $85 billion. That's $25 billion. It's almost a 50% increase in healthcare spending. Education spending went from $24 billion to $29 billion. $5 billion more is spent on education. 8,000 new educators, tens of thousands of new childcare spaces. On the housing side, we have the Building Faster Fund. North Bay was a recipient of $400,000, their share, because they built more homes than their quota. There's quotas all around Ontario. These municipalities are all getting extra money. We just announced, I think it was like the day of the writ, or maybe a day or two before, $1.9 million for North Bay to open up Metcalfe Street. You know where that is. It's an area it's pretty rocky. That will open up 13 acres of city-owned land for housing development. They'll put a tender out now. We're paying for the sewer and water to go in there and all the blasting. And if the city is on the ball, as I know Mayor Chirco is, they'll do their blasting at the same time and build 13 acres of level, fully serviced land to help our people here. Those are some of the answers.
I'm going to let that go. There's a little picky things about, the health budget. Is that up because we're paying nurses double the salary because they're in private places to replace nurses instead of having them? What was the impact of the legislation of keeping the nurses' wages down and whatnot? But I am very appreciate the fact that you're taking it serious and you're working on the healthcare. I think that's very important. And we only have a few more minutes, so I wanted to make sure that you get your last question.
Yeah, so I would love, like, after the election, one of the things is, I know there was a lot going on before. I wanted you in, because I would love to have a conversation in the future about understanding government, not the political parties, but it's more the government, because you came from, like, a business, the marketing world, where things got to move fast. There's got to be clip. You got to move at a rate of speed. You got to keep things moving. Government's different. It's not business, and it can't, and it literally can't be run like business. I'd love to have a discussion about, like, when you put whatever, your government, whatever government, millions of dollars into this, it's how it's executed, right? And then that's a government thing. So you don't have to answer it now.
It's called the machinery of government.
The machinery of government.
Yes,
and
it
what
works
you've
at a different
learned,
pace. Yeah.
Like, you've spent a lot of time now, and you've told me some stories off mic about government and stuff. I would love to have a conversation about that. My last question, well, there's actually two, because Cheryl had one question. that's I don't know. I want to ask that one last, but I had written down what you want to do for this riding. If you're lucky enough to get elected and you get in, what is your goals for this riding?
Well, I want to be on the very first Northlander train ride. That's a very painful story. You've heard me talk about that many, many times. I was in the legislature, got elected in 2011, new in the legislature. 2012 came within a couple of months of us just getting sworn in, and then Premier McGuinty announced that they were shutting down the Northlander. And that was a devastating blow, I think, to not just to the men and women who work at Ontario Northland and the countless employees, but to the 110, I think at the time, year history of that train taking people from Toronto basically to Cochrane to go on to Moosonee. To have that canceled, I've been championing that from day one. I was the only Northerner to be able to stand up and vote against that. The NDP sat on their hands. They didn't vote either way.
Really?
The Liberals voted to shut it down. The NDP literally sat on their hands, and I stood up to vote against it. So when I hear the NDP or anybody else talk about that, no, you don't get that anymore. You did not help. You could have stopped it that day along with me. They didn't. So we dug deeper. We went to the Auditor General. She proved that this was they made an argument that they were going to save 267 or whatever it is, I can't remember the numbers anymore, millions of dollars. We proved that it would cost them about $880 million, not just for the Northlander, but for the rest of Ontario Northland. And we got her to stand up. She wrote a separate report, a report on Ontario Northland that disproved everything the Liberals said, and she supplied the Auditor General's numbers. That gives justification to bring it back. They never did. The Liberals never did. We will. So I want to be on that train. That's the first thing. At Ontario Northland, we just announced another $350 million contract for go-cars from Toronto. There's 900 go-cars to go. Like, this is billions of dollars. I want that here. previous government, the Liberals, tried to send it to New Brunswick. We blocked that when I was mayor. We showed them that the lost provincial sales tax was going to cost them a fortune. So they reluctantly left it here. And we found out later why they wanted it to go to New Brunswick. They didn't want any business at Ontario Northland, so they could shut it down. You couldn't shut Ontario Northland down if you had a GO Train contract. And so that's why they tried to get it to New Brunswick. The next contract came up, they did ship it to Quebec. Even though it was more money to ship it to Quebec, they said, the hell with it. Quebec's getting the contract. It was hundreds of millions of dollars, went to Quebec, and they shut. And then they were able to justify, Ontario Northland has no business, we can shut them down. And that's when the auditor stepped in. So I want to see more contracts for them.
Personal note on that, because my son works there now. He was in mining for a long time, and he says, I want to be home, Dad. And then he had the opportunity, and he's working at Ontario Northland, and he does the refurbishment. And then he just said, I think Vic Fedeli was at work today. And then when I read the story, it was like, okay, that's like, you just got years of work. And so he has hopes of, getting his apprenticeship and all these things and opportunity. And so that's, he doesn't realize it yet. That was a big deal.
It was a very big day. It was a very big day. Then I still think there's more to do in long-term care. We're building 30,000 long-term care beds in Ontario. We're upgrading another 30,000. I want to see some more built here, so I'm going to fight for a few more licenses. We've got Canada College going to build 160 new beds, long-term care beds, up at their site, and that should break ground. I suspect it'll break ground this spring, maybe even before that. But I still want to fight for further licenses for long-term care. Those were my goals last time. We got 2 brand new long-term care facilities being built. The one in Algonquin adds some additional beds. Plus, it really adds about 100 spaces. Although they're not new spaces, they're multiple rooms at the former long-term care facility. They can't put that many people in a room anymore, so those beds are theoretically gone. So when you open a brand new single bed facility, we're going to have lots of beds, but I still want more.
So last question. Cheryl said she never asked to ask a question because she's known you for like 40, 50
since we
years.
Were kids.
Yeah,
I've known your wife since we were kids.
She said, can you ask Vic what makes him mad? Because I've never seen him mad.
Well, I'm always smiling.
I know. That's why she says I've never seen him mad. Does anything make you mad? Come on.
Other than O&R contracts going out of province?
O&R contracts going out of province would be one.
Yeah. Things that aren't fair. That would make me mad when I see injustices. I think that would really tick me off. Now you're, the O&R contract, I was very mad that day and have been mad for years. Thrilled that I'm in a position to fix that finally, and we're fixing it.
And you have a passion for that because that was a contract I think you had when you were in the marketing world,
When I was
right?
in the marketing business, Ontario Northland was a great client.
Yeah. Nipissing was. You had a few real strong clients that built your business, and so you have a personal affinity with it.
Yep.
Well, we were able to squeeze out a couple more minutes, so that's we have to let you go though, right?
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about more things and in detail, but this isn't a debate. This is to hear your voice, talk about things that are important to you. I think we have something in common in that we try to fight against unfairness, and appreciate that you're doing that for Nipissing riding. I find that you've always been very capable and adept at doing the jobs you've tackled, so I appreciate the work you've done, and good luck going forward. I don't see anybody beating you, but I'd be interested in seeing what they have to say to hear what's important to the other people that aren't in with your party. And I think you listen and try your best. I think you're up against a lot down in Queen's Park, so we appreciate that. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate your comments.
That's the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.